Alright, welcome to the review for the equations test. So, number one, solve the equation and write a justification for each step. So, most of us are probably going to distribute that 5. So, when we distribute the 5 to y over 10, we get 5y over 10, which is 1y over 2, plus 5 times 0.3 is 1.5, and that's equal to 25. The justification is the distributive property. Next, we're going to subtract the 1.5 from both sides, and that leaves us with 1y over 2 is equal to 23.5. That was the subtraction property of equality. And then finally, we're going to multiply both sides by 2, and we're left with y equals 47, and that is the multiplication property of equality. Number 2, once again, we're going to distribute, this time a negative, so I get 3x minus 2 is equal to 13. It's distributive property. Add the 2 to both sides. 3x is equal to 15. That's the addition property of equality. And finally, divide both sides by 3. And I'm left with x equals 5. And that is the division property of equality. Going back up to number 3, again we're solving an equation. This time it's just going to be one step. Multiply both sides by the reciprocal, which is negative 2 over 1. Those are going to cancel out. X is equal to negative 100. Number 4. Start by subtracting 5 to both sides. I'm going to get 10 equals negative 2x. Divide both sides by negative 2. Negative 5 is equal to x. Number 5. We have variables on both sides, so I need to move one of them to the other side. I'm going to move this negative x by adding it. So those are canceled. 5 minus x is equal to 15. Subtract the 5. Negative x is equal to 10 divided by negative 1. So x is equal to negative 10. Last question for this standard. I've got a lot of distributing to do. In fact, I have to do it 3 separate times. So I'm left with 3x minus 6 minus 2x minus 6 equals 125 plus 2x minus 4. That was the distributive property. I'm going to combine some like terms. So I've got the 3x and minus 2x. That leaves me with x minus 12 is equal to 125 take away 4 is 121 plus 2x. So that was my combine like terms step. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did on the previous problem. I'm going to subtract 2x from each side to get the variables onto the same side. These with negative x minus 12 is equal to 121. That was subtraction property of equality. Add the 12. So negative x is equal to 133. That was addition property of equality. And then final step, divide by negative 1. X is equal to negative 133, division property of equality. Moving on to number 7. So we have to set up and solve each of these word problems. The first one, the width of the rectangle is 1/3 of its length. The perimeter is 72. What is the width? So first of all, we know that perimeter is 2p plus 2l. And then right here it tells us that the width is 1/3 the length. So we can write a separate expression or separate equation just for the width and say that the width is 1/3 the length. So if I take this 1/3 L, oops, not pretty sure I said the right thing up here, just didn't write it. So the perimeter is 2 times the width plus 2 times the length. Sorry about that. So now I know that the width is 1/3 of the length. So I'm going to replace that width with 1/3 L. The perimeter is 72, so 72 is equal to 2 times 1/3 L. So this is my new width plus my length, 2L. Going to distribute, so I get 2/3 L plus 2L. Combine like terms, so 72 is equal to 2/3 plus 2 is going to give me 8/3 L. Multiply both sides by the reciprocal. Which is 3/8. And that leaves us with the length being 27, but we need the width. And we know that the width is 1/3 the length, so the width is 1/3 of 27. So that tells me that my width is 9 inches. Number 8, Zuzu's salary is 3/4 of Paul's salary. Together they earn $1,323 a month. So together they earn $1,323. So that means that Zuzu plus Paul is 1,323. And then we know that Zuzu is equal to 3/4 of whatever Paul is. So again, I'm going to take the value that I know Zuzu is, plug it in. So 3/4 P plus P is equal to 1,323. Combine like terms, going to get 7/4 P is equal to 1,323. Multiply by the reciprocal. So Paul is going to make $756, and we know that Zuzu makes 3/4 of Paul. So that means that Zuzu is going to make $576. Number 9, you're driving to Flagstaff from school. In the first hour, you travel 3/4 of the total distance. In the second hour, you drive the rest of the remaining 55 miles. What is the total distance you drove? So the question is, what is the total distance? That's going to be my variable d. So the distance we drove is equal to the distance we drove in the first hour, which was 3/4 of the distance, plus in the second hour we drove 55 more miles. Now we can solve that equation. Subtract the 3/4 d. So those cancel out, and we are going to be left with 1d minus 3/4 d leaves us with 1/4 d. That's equal to 55. Multiply by the reciprocal, which in this case is just 4. So d is equal to 220 miles. Number 10. Actually, number 10 we are not going to do. That was a bad question. We did that one in class, so you should have the correct question on your review. Number 11. Maria is buying a new laptop at Best Buy. And we're told some things about Maria. It's on sale for 2/3 of the original price. Then she uses a $50 gift card. and then her final cost is $3.50. So let's start with the first sentence, 2/3 of the original price. So if the original price is P, she paid 2/3 of that. So she paid 2/3 of P. Then she used a gift card, so we take off $50 more, and then she's left with $350 to pay for out of pocket. So if we solve that equation, add the 50 to both sides. So 2/3 P is equal to 400 multiplied by the reciprocal. So P is equal to $600 was the original price of the laptop. Number 12, Susie's renting a car and they charge $150 a week. They also charge 3 cents per mile. And then she can only spend $200. How many miles can she drive? So let's start with the first part of that sentence. She gets charged $150 for the week. So if she's only driving for 1 week, she's getting charged $150. Plus, she's getting charged an additional 3 cents for every mile she drives, and she can spend up to $200. So if we solve this, we get 0.03 m is equal to 50. So she has to pay $50 in mileage, 3 cents a mile. So we divide by the 3 cents. And we get a mileage. If we use our calculator, we get 1,666.67 miles. Well, we normally get charged by the full mile, so we either have to round that up or round it down. Since she can only spend $200, we're going to round this down, because if she drives for 1,667 miles, she's paid too much. So we're going to say she can drive 1,666 total miles. Number 13. Lawrence's parents pay him a base allowance of $20 per week and $3.55 per hour for extra chores. Write an equation that models Lawrence's total income. So let's see, the total income, T, should be equal to what he starts with, which is $20 for the week, plus $3.55 for every extra hour that he works. There's my equation. Part B, evaluate the total amount of money Lawrence makes if he does 7 hours of chores. So that's going to be T equals 20 plus 3.55 times 7. So order of operations, T is equal to 20 plus 24.85. So if we add those together, sorry about the limited space, T, so his total that he's going to make is $44.85. 14. Verizon charges $10 for text messages, or for 100 texts, and then every text after that is an extra 10 cents. So write an equation to represent this scenario. So the total cost, T, is equal to $10 for the first 100 texts plus 10 cents for every text after the first 100. So that means we have the number of texts we send minus 100. So we're only paying for extra text after the first 100. So we have big T to represent the total, little t to represent the text. Probably could actually rewrite that instead of a T, we could put a C there for the cost. Make it a little clearer. So evaluate the total amount of money Verizon will charge if you send 1,200 texts. So that's C equals $10 plus 10 cents times 1,200 minus 100. And when I follow my order of operations, I'm going to subtract $1,200 minus 100, multiply that by 10 cents, then add 10 more dollars. I'm left with a total cost of $120. Alright, for number 15, the swap meet charges $20 per day to rent a space plus one-time fee of $5. Write an equation for the total swap meet charges C, where D is the number of days. So we have a total cost of $20 per day plus a $5 application fee. There's my equation. Part B says use the equation, evaluate the total charges if you rent the space for 8 days. So my total charges is 20 times 8 days, $20 times 8 days plus an extra $5. So $20 for 8 days is 160 plus 5 more dollars is $165. Number 16, getting into rearranging formulas. This one says solve for b, so I'm going to try to get b by itself. I'm going to start by moving the constant. It's minus 10. So remember, we write it the way we read it. Y take away 10 is equal to 5/8 b. To get rid of the coefficient, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, 8 over 5. So these cancel out, and that's going to leave me with, when I distribute the 8/5, I'm going to get 8/5 y minus 8/5 times negative 10 is negative 16, and that's equal to b. 17, solve the following formula for h. So that means we're going to get h by itself. I'm going to start by getting rid of this 2, multiply both sides by 2 because that's how we get rid of the bottom of a fraction. So 2a is equal to b1 plus b2. Don't really know what letter that was, so we'll do that again. b2, and we still have times h. So now to get rid of the b1 plus b2, that b1 plus b2 is multiplying, so we're going to divide by b1 plus b2 to both sides. Those cancel out, so my height is equal to 2a over b1 plus b2. Finally, we get to number 18, solve for y. So I'm going to get y by itself. So again, I'm going to move, even though x is a variable, we're treating 3x like a constant because it is not the same variable as the y. So we're going to subtract 3x. So we're going to write it the way we read it. Negative 15 minus 3x is equal to 6y. Divide every single part by 6. That means we're going to have to reduce some fractions. And we're left with negative 15 over 6, which is negative 5/2. Negative 3 over 6x is negative 1/2 x, and that's equal to y. 19. Remember again, we're going to skip the second part B because that was about a triangle, not about a square, which really it's a square but should have been a rectangle. It's just a poorly worded question. At the end of the day, though, we're just worried about what it's asking us to do. So the area of a square is 56.8 square inches. Write an equation to represent the situation using base and height. So even though we know that for a square the base and the height are the same, we're just going to generalize it. Say base times height. If the area is 56.8, it means we have an equation of 56.8 is equal to the base times the height. So there's my equation. We need to rewrite that in terms of the height. Remember that sentence right there, in terms of height, means height should be by itself, which means I need to get rid of the base. Those are multiplying, so I'm going to divide. So the height of my square is 56.8 divided by my base. And now we get to the last standard. Excuse that for just a second. So we need to solve this absolute value equation. So the first thing we need to do is isolate the 3, or isolate the g. So we're going to divide both sides by 3. So the absolute value, which is limited on space here, so the absolute value of g is equal to 5. Now I'm going to split it into two equations. G, the stuff inside the absolute value, is equal to 5, and g is equal to -5. There's nothing to solve here, so those are my two equations. On the back side, we're asked to check it. So the way we check it is we plug our value back into the original function, which was 3 times the absolute value of g equals 15, and we make sure that everything works. So we're going to check positive 5 first. So 3 times the absolute value of 5 is 15. We know that the absolute value of 5 is 5, so 3 times 5 equals 15. That's true. And then 3 times the absolute value of -5 is 15. Absolute value of -5 is still 5. And once again, 3 times 5 is 15. 21. Solve and check. So once again, need to isolate the absolute value, so I'm going to divide by 3. So I get absolute value of x minus 9 is equal to 5. Now I can split it into my two separate equations. X minus 9 is equal to 5, and x minus 9 is equal to -5. Add the 9 to both sides. So x is equal to 14, and in this case, -5 plus 9 is 4. So those are my two possible choices there. If I check my work, 3 times the absolute value of 14 minus 9 should be equal to 5. Order of operations, we treat the absolute value like parentheses. So 14 minus 9 is 5. Once again, absolute value of 5 is 5, so I have 3 times 5, which is 15. That works out. And I check the other side. 3 times the absolute value of 4 minus 9 is 15. 4 minus 9 is -5. And once again, that turns into a positive 5, and so that is also true. 22. I'm going to start by adding the 15 to both sides. To get 5 times the absolute value of x minus 25 is equal to 55. Divide everything by 5. So the absolute value of x minus 25 is equal to 11. So I can make my two equations. X minus 25 equals 11. X minus 25 equals -11. Add the 25 to both sides. I'm going to go ahead and do that to both of them right now. So I get two answers of x equals 36 and 14. Once again, we need to check our work. So 5 times the absolute value of 36 minus 25 minus 15 equals 40. I'm going to go ahead and do this real quick. 36 minus 25 is 11. The absolute value of 11 is 11. So I have 5 times 11 minus 15 equals to 40. So that's 55 minus 15 is 40. That is true. And then 5 times the absolute value of 14 minus 25 minus 15 equals 40. 14 minus 25 is negative 11. The absolute value of that is still positive 11. And so 5 times 11 is 55 minus 15 is equal to 40 once again. That is also true. 23. Starship Enterprise. Captain Picard asked for the food replicator to brew him a cup of Earl Grey tea. The brew temperature is 210 plus or minus 5 degrees. So we need to write an equation. Remember, the equation should be, since it's plus or minus, the way we get that is with absolute value. So the absolute value of something should be 5 degrees. And the something that we're taking the absolute value of is the actual temperature of the tea minus the stated temperature of the tea, which is 210. So the absolute value of the absolute value of x minus 210 is equal to 5 degrees. The last part down here says solve that. So if we solve that, x minus 210 is equal to 5, and x minus 210 is equal to negative 5. We can probably figure that out, just mental math, that x has to be 215 degrees Fahrenheit or 205 degrees Fahrenheit. Those are the two temperatures that the tea has to be between. Alright, very last problem. A machine fills Quaker oatmeal containers with 32 ounces of oatmeal. After the containers are filled, another machine weighs them. If the container's weight differs from the desired weight of 32 by more than half an ounce, the container is rejected. Write an equation that can be used to model the acceptable container weights. So again, the absolute value of something, because it has to be no different than half an ounce. That's half an ounce too low or half an ounce too high. And again, we're going to set it up as the weight we want, or the actual weight, minus the desired weight. It has to be within half an ounce. And then we have to solve it. So x minus 32 is equal to half an ounce, and x minus 32 is equal to a negative half of an ounce. Add the 32. Once again, probably could have done mental math for this last part. It has to be within a half an ounce of 32 ounces. It has to be either 32.5 ounces or 31.5 ounces. Anything outside of that will be rejected.